smartest guys around are about to break it down like they've won the game a million times.
Well, actually, they didn't really win the game at all.
Survivor no way knows. Survivor no way knows. Steven and Rob without it down. Got the game all figured out. They know it all.
Yeah, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are back together this week after a little bit of an interruption last week. Thanks so much to Owen Knight for jumping in for me on the podcast last week while I had to be a very good husband and attend to my wife's medical needs.
Hobnobbing with the doctorati.
Hobnobbing with the medical crew.
Yeah.
All right, but everything is back to normal over here, and very excited to be back here with Stephen Fishbach.
Rob, it's a thrill to be back with you too. My gosh, I missed you. I mean, it was wonderful podcasting with Owen. I thought he did an awesome job. Rob, I want to say before we start, I guess this is actually kind of starting. Can I jump right in? I'm just going to
jump right in. Jump.
I loved your interview with Gabe. I just listened to it before we did this. I thought it was so good. It made me really like Gabe in a way. I enjoyed him on the show, but I think we got a lot of like kind of mustache twirling confessionals from him where he was like, I'm just using all these people. And he gave such great, thorough, like big, insightful answers on to your questions. He spoke a mile a minute. You know how you like say like some people speak in paragraphs? Like he was speaking in like essay format, you know, like well-structured essay. So great listen for anybody who has not yet listened to it. And I would like, you know, you did mention that you think he'd be a great podcast guest. At some point, you know, when you are hobnobbing with the Glitterati, I would like to get him on the as a fill-in know-it-all.
Yeah, I think that Gabe, and I appreciate all that. Thank you very much, Stephen. That I think that Gabe is a character and a persona. I think that I've been comparing him to like a James Jones of that somebody who is like very knowledgeable at the game in like a very like good position for most of the game, that they are going to have like interesting takes about the game coming off of the show. Yeah. But I do feel like that Survivor doesn't necessarily know what to do with this character. I think that so much of Survivor is about depicting the struggle, the underdog. Like Andy, they know what to do with. Teeny, they know what to do with. But person who's kind of like the overdog, and other than just turning them into a flat out villain, which they don't really want to do, and I don't think that these players are doing anything to necessitate them becoming villains, I think it's a little bit hard for the show to find what to do with these players that are sort of like running their side of the alliance and not doing anything that's making them like unlikable people.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. And I think you're right that, you know, those kind of mustache twirling confessionals are the symptom of that. It's like we got to get him something. We have to show him being strategic. And it used to be back when they were
overconfident.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Back when they were like, and if he wins, of course, you show like all the little strategic permutations of that. But like when he goes out in 9th place, you know, and that's hard to do. And, you know, it used to be that there were 3 or 4 really strategic people on a season. And like, then you could kind of really give them sort of breath. But, you know, when everybody, and especially this season, really like everybody is playing like a decent game, or better, you know, I think it's what do you do with like that guy, like the top dog? You're right. That's a real, and we got, you know, I think he's great as an establishing character. We got him a lot out of the gate, like building the alliance, looking for the boxes. But then at this sort of like mid-merge, you know, where do you show that? And especially, yeah. So it's interesting. Like, you know.
Yeah. So got the exit interview in with Gabe. Then last night had a really fun podcast with Q, who said that Q has hijacked a podcast, and he came in and was really, really fun. Lots of interesting stuff with Q. I also recorded an interview today. I mean, it's talk about New Era Mount Rushmore week here on Rob as a podcast that I just got off talking to Carolyn. And so that's going to be tomorrow. we're going to premiere my interview with Carolyn.
Now, on the Q podcast, did you cancel Christmas?
I'm hoping that Q cancels Christmas.
Okay.
I really am. You know, that I got a lot of obligations at Christmas time. And if Q cancels Christmas, that would be phenomenal for me.
Right. A lot fewer gifts to give.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And really, there's just like all that time off, would not have to be doing Christmas stuff. Don't have to decorate. I mean, if Q cancels Christmas, I would be the number one fan of that.
Are you a Grinch?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
They say I'm a Grinch, but I spend a lot of money on presents and doing all these things for everybody. Like I make a lot of people have a very good holiday, but they still call me a Grinch.
You know what I would say, Rob? I feel like the real altruists are the people who hate doing it, but do it anyway. You know, like
that's me.
You love giving.
That's me.
It's a selfish act to give, but you hate it and you do it anyway.
And I do it anyway.
You're a true hero. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for finally noticing, Stephen. I appreciate that. But anyway, so one of the things that came up with Q last night that I think is interesting about this season, especially compared to Survivor 46, is that this game is seemingly like Survivor 46 to me was like a season of like haves and have-nots in terms of, okay, these are the couple of people that we're identifying that can win, and then the people who are drawing dead. And then ultimately Kenzie was kind of the person who's like, well, she's not drawing dead, but she's not the big threat.
Right.
And then ultimately she ends up being the person who wins. This season is actually much different in that there's really not like a have and have not situation where there's not like 2 or 3 people that we have identified. Okay, these are the true power players that if they get to the end, they win. And then here's 4 people that are drawing dead. Like overall, it's pretty even. And Genevieve kind of elevated herself as like Genevieve and Gabe had sort of been like slightly elevated above the rest of the fray, which made them number 1 targets. I kind of thought that after last week, Genevieve taking out Saul was a decent enough move because, as we've seen in the new era, the big you take out the big threat. You have to go. Well, Genevieve's like, I'll take out a medium threat.
Right.
But she did something, and it's like, okay, well, Genevieve has to go.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting though, in terms of like this season of how open it is, and then also there's also no like, okay, they have no shot.
Yeah, I truly, I mean. Even, you know, a lot of people are speculating that Andy could win this season. And, you know, if you had looked in episode 1, it's like the guy you're saying, oh, that guy's got no shot. But now he's a real viable winner. I mean, who really has no shot? I think Sue is pretty unlikely based on what we've seen.
I would say she's 8 of 8.
And then like Kyle is probably 7. But, you know, the rest of them are, but only because like why? Because Kyle gets to the end, people are voting for him. I can see a world where Kyle wins.
Yeah, no? Kyle is not drawing dead. Kyle like has no shot to get to the end because people realize that he would win.
And he quite literally has no shot in the dark to get to the end either.
Hey-o.
Hey. So yeah, it is really interesting. It's a very fun season, I think, because everyone is making strategic-ish, you know, other than possibly Sue, whose primary motivation seems to be that Kyle wrote her name down. Everyone else is making strategic decisions, you know, that are with the goal of advancing themselves further into the game. Now, I think something that 46 had that this season doesn't have is that sort of like those kind of like breakout characters. And even 45, which I honestly think like is my favorite season of the new era. I hope that's not a contentious take. Like I
don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that's the conventional wisdom.
Oh, shoot. Oh, well,
what happened?
Change. Oh gosh, what have I become? I guess I'm a middle-aged man. Just like conventional. All what I believe are my own opinions, or it's conventional. No, but like, you know, there you had like a few characters who you're like, wow, those people are playing really good games. Like D is playing a really good game. And I don't know if we have like that yet this season. I feel like that's what this season is missing. But so many people are playing good games. You know, there's so many people who are playing really strong, good games that are really fun to watch, and seeing all those permutations come together is really exciting. I mean, I know that Jeff, you know, according to the On Fire podcast, like hates the blowout votes, but you know, the journey to get to these blowout votes where you're seeing just all of these people wheeling and dealing is so fascinating. Like to me, that's what Survivor's about.
Well, this has been a season of pile-ons in terms of the votes. Even last night's 9-person vote was a 7-2 split. Do you make anything of that in terms of, is that the players being like somewhat craven of like, okay, oh, this is where the votes are going. Let's all just vote with the house, as they would say on Big Brother?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think they're self-interested. They're all smart. And so nobody's going to like take a stand and like do a losing vote. You know, there seems to be a lot of information flow between them because the alliance lines are not that rigid. And so as a result of that, you have a lot of different, you know, everyone kind of like gets the final word. You know, last week, obviously, it was really seemed to be at the last minute, but everyone gets the word. And so nobody wants to be left out and they intelligently jump into the vote. You know, it's fun seeing someone like Andy put himself at the center of that kind of information flow where he is like the major information broker, at least it seems. I mean, he's had really quite a recovery.
So we saw in this episode a lot of Andy talking about, you know, the great confessional with him with the spider. We also saw Rachel and Sam sort of in the middle of that. Do you think that, and we'll get to who gets the fishy, but were they the ultimate shot callers here in what was going to happen versus it being Genevieve or Gabe?
Yeah. I mean, I think like obviously,
or was it Caroline?
It was Caroline. Was she the one who kind of like came around on it? I think that this was a situation where who had the vote where like you show them holding it? Was it Tina? Someone who had the vote that you show them holding up the parchment and saying like, you know, we just can't miss this chance to take you out right now. It was like right at the last.
Let me review my notes.
I'm sure someone in the chat will get it, but you know, I think that was ultimately, you know, what it was is that you've got these 4 Tuku. You just cannot, as much as you might want to get Genevieve out. Someone's saying Rachel. So, okay. You know, as much as you might want to get,
Genevieve, you know, out, Rachel, we heard that, we didn't see what she voted.
That's the point. It's like, you cannot let the 4 Tuku advance to 8. Like, even though we as the viewers know that there's dissension in those ranks, that like Sue hates Kyle, like I think like, it's easy to toy with the idea of like, let's get out Genevieve, but like, you really just can't let this group of 4 that's never voted against each other, except the one time Kyle voted for Sue, which was pre-merge, you know, but you know, so, but you know, you can't let them get to 8 together. So like, I think the pressure to take out Gabe was always going to be a little bit overwhelming. And Josh Kettles made this great point on Blue Sky that, you know, it actually kind of makes Genevieve's move to take out Saul a little bit better, because even if she's worried about being a target like this coming week, there's just so much pressure to take out a Tuku.
So last week's move of taking out Saul was a better move because it put the onus on, okay, the other 5 people have to vote together to take out one of the Tuku.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like there's just no, like you have a little bit of insulation going into this vote because, you know, and of course, like there's a world where, you know, Sue finds out about it and plays her idol for Gabe. But like, even so, you know, even in that world, it's Genevieve going
home. They don't even know Sue has an idol.
Right. Well, right. And Gabe didn't know Sue had an idol.
Right. So let's go back to, because you and I didn't get to talk about Genevieve's move from last week. And I think that I was, at the time that it happened, I was a little bit like, okay, I love that she did this, you know, sad for Saul, but I don't really understand the logic behind it. But we got in the episode that there was at least some, even though in this episode we talked about that Genevieve doesn't have any emotional feelings towards people, the episode gave us a little bit that like, hey, this is payback for my friend Rome. I hate Saul for that. I wanted to get him out since he screwed over Rome. But in this episode, Genevieve is like very much like, I didn't have any sort of personal feelings with people. So for Genevieve, now trying not to be results oriented, I felt like that her move really just kind of just spiraled out of control. I thought that it was probably would have been better received by everybody had it been what she ultimately tried to do originally, where, okay, I'm going to vote with the Tuku, get Andy on board, and then go, and that'll be it. And it's not going to be seen so much as a Genevieve move.
Right. But it really, like, I mean, credit to Gabe, although it didn't work out for him. Like, he really like was like, hey, this is your move, Genevieve. This is your choice. And I think you're probably right that she probably did not want to own it as much as she did. She probably wanted, I feel like we never got Genevieve's answer about why this was so good for her. And hopefully at some point she'll be interviewed. I'd love to like find out why it was so important. So Saul said in your exit interview with him that, he had all these different connections. And so Genevieve wanted to like eliminate that because it opened up her game more. But it still is not totally clear to me why this was good for her game, because Saul was someone who was, according to him, trying to get her to the final 3. He was someone who was like watching her back. And, here, this episode, we see Genevieve largely isolated. Nobody is talking to her. She says, like, I'm just sitting here. Nobody's coming over and talking to me. And that, that's what you miss from not having allies. Like, you need the people who are in the conversations that you're not in, telling you what you need to pay attention to. And so that's why I think it was like such a bad move for Genevieve. And I think it did almost blow up in her face. And I think if it weren't for this overwhelming pressure of these 4 Tukus, like it probably would have. That being said, I do think there's a world where now she's a little bit off the hook. I think realistically, I think Genevieve is one of the next 2 vote outs, but I think it might not be the next vote out, because sometimes in Survivor, like when someone like just barely misses it, like people kind of give them a grace period. On the next vote, they're like, okay, you got through that one. We're going to move on. Like
if Kyle is vulnerable, that could be huge for Genevieve. Yeah. I think it's interesting that this vote ended up being between Gabe and Genevieve, because I kind of see them as similar players in the game. And I think that maybe Genevieve might have, had a little bit of a self-awareness that maybe Gabe didn't see as much, as they were potentially both seen as the leader of their group. And for Genevieve, who wasn't as tight with Teeny and Saul, even though Teeny and Saul felt tight with Genevieve, I think that Genevieve is like, hey, if I don't take out one of my own numbers, they're going to take me down as the leader of the Lavo people. Yeah. And that for Gabe, that is ultimately what happened to him, is that he was seen as the leader of the Tuku 4. Caroline, I thought it was back when they had that tribal council with Rachel, I think she says to Tiana, where Tiana's like, hey, if we go back with 5 of us, like they're gonna take us out. And Caroline says, yep, they'll take out one of us, but it won't be me or you. It'll be Gabe.
Great callback.
And I think that for Genevieve, I think that she was able to see, I'm in trouble here as being, if I am as seen as the leader of this group. So if I take out Saul, all of a sudden I'm not as threatening. But she wasn't able to do it in a way to hide the fact that she was the person who made a move.
Yeah, she became much more threatening. If that was her goal, mission failed.
And I wonder if Gabe, maybe the move should have been to target Kyle last time.
Right.
And does Gabe stay if when Kyle doesn't win immunity, okay, let me, instead of trying to, jam my 4 down the throats of everybody else when we have the numbers, should I get ahead of that and take out Kyle so that that preemptive strike doesn't come at me?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the major theme that I wanted to talk about today, which is, and Kyle said the same thing, right? I need to take out Gabe. Like, he's going to come for me. And Gabe really laid that out. He said, there's 4 Tukus. I've got to get out Kyle, because he said that, right, in the episode. Like, I've got to get out Kyle because we are going to be so threatening as a block. Like, it just puts huge heat on me. And we do talk so much, on this podcast about how silly it is often for people to turn on their allies. But when your ally being in the game is creating like more heat on you, does that make it a good move? And I'm so curious, is it a good move? According to this episode, the first person to bring up Gabe's name was Kyle. And I think, even Gabe said, Kyle kind of like broaching it sort of like opened it up, and probably Gabe would have been a target anyway, or the target anyway. But, Kyle saying it kind of like just sort of starts the ball rolling a bit. And is this a good move for Kyle? Like, does this remove heat from him? No. Gabe made the point in your exit interview that no, it's not a good. I was thinking, like, do I give a Fishy to Kyle today? Like, he is the last person left without a Fishy. Like, wouldn't that be beautiful? Like, so it's such a commune of Fishy holders. Yeah. But like Gabe made the point on your interview, it's bad for Kyle because Gabe was always going to be a target to deflect off of Kyle.
Yeah. Kyle was the one person who would have been most served by Tuku sticking together. So I think that while for Genevieve, maybe it's smart, hey, I'm going to try to like weaken my side. for Kyle, his only path to the end is to be part of like be the lowest person on a strong side, and that he is not seen as a big target. So for Gabe, it made sense to target Kyle last week when he was vulnerable. I did not think it was such a hot move for Kyle to be targeting Gabe.
Yeah. I ultimately I agree, because he is such a big target with this immunity streak, that he's on. Dalton tweeted that if he wins the next one, he will have met, or I'm sorry, maybe it was someone tweeted, maybe it was Jeff, True Dark Times, that this will be match Aussie streak of winning 5 out of 6 challenges. Now of course there is a big asterisk by one of Kyle's wins, but yeah. Multiple. Why? What's the other? The one asterisk I'm thinking of is where 2 people did better than him.
2 people did better than him, but also he ends up winning against half the field in the first one.
That's the
Shannon
same one.
Gus also. So that there was 2, because the first one's at Mergatory.
Yeah, but at some point it's are Cochran's wins against the final 4 of that? Do those not count? He wanted an individual, he got the necklace. Are we now trying to count how many people are in the field before we give you full credit?
I mean, in terms of the individual immunity wins, he would not have even been eligible to compete for it had he been on the side of the Mergatory that lost. So it was against a lesser field. Also, then one of them was one man, one woman. Yeah. So. It's a little bit, I don't know necessarily, look, great job by Kyle, but to compare it to, I'm not sure what if we go back to see if there's anything Fugazi with Ozzy's 5 wins, or who else had 5.
I mean, I think Terry probably had 5, in Panama, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Didn't
Colby had 5? Wasn't he the first to 5?
Yeah, we'll look it up this week and see. How do we put in comparison?
Oh,
Kyle's
Mike Holloway, yeah. But it's some of these are the final 4. You beat 3 people, but Kyle beat 5 people. Do you really need to how neat are we getting here?
I guess so. I didn't think of it that way in terms of is it that impressive if you win the final 4 immunity?
Yeah,
it's always been impressive to me.
Yeah. But or if it's an eating competition, do you get an asterisk because it wasn't a ball balancing competition? That's
yeah. I know. So it sounds like you're saying no asterisks.
Or there's literally 2 people who perform him. Mm-hmm. That's hard to stomach as a true win.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So where should we jump back into this? Do you want to talk about any particular players?
Well, let's talk about who. So, is this a good move? And then, who is this a good move for, Gabe? I mean, I think we're all agreeing.
Was it a good move to take out Gabe?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go down the line. So yeah, definitely a good move for
Genevieve,
for Teeny, good move for Genevieve. Yeah. I think that Rachel is an interesting inflection point. Rachel seemingly wanted to take out Genevieve and ultimately kind of settles for Gabe in this episode after there wasn't enough of a critical mass to take out Genevieve. Did you think that Genevieve was a better target for Rachel?
Well, what's funny about it is at least the story that I saw in the episode, and tell me if you agree or disagree with this, was that Andy kind of puts the brainworm into Genevieve's ear that, that she's threatening to her. Cause we see Andy say something to Rachel.
Yeah.
Oh, and Genevieve was throwing your name out too. She's wary of you. And then it seems, and we have Rachel go huh. And then in every subsequent conversation, Rachel's we got to get out Genevieve.
That's funny. Genevieve. I didn't put go back to Andy. And yeah, he says that not only that, I think he sells past the clothes because he's oh, Genevieve was saying your name. So I wouldn't trust her if I were you.
But then she does it, I mean, and maybe
doesn't.
Rachel already didn't trust Genevieve, but,
and she shouldn't. I mean, in fairness though, we have seen Genevieve pushing for Rachel in the past. So I don't know necessarily if it was
it's a lie. I mean, it's good for Andy to kind of create all this dissension around him, right?
Yeah. So I feel like that for Rachel, I think that leaving I know that Genevieve is gunning for Rachel to some degree, but I feel like that Genevieve is still a bigger target. I guess that this is an interesting question of, is it better to have a bigger target out there that is potentially saying your name, or like take out a lesser target, a lesser shield for you who's not targeting you?
Oh, that's interesting. Better to take out a bigger target who is saying your name. Wait, no, no. That's like doubly bad. Like to take out, you want a bigger target, and you want someone who. Oh, I see what you're saying.
But the bigger target is Genevieve. But if Genevieve is saying like, "Hey, what about Rachel?"
People saying your name. I mean, although maybe at this point everybody's saying everybody's name, but the people who are pushing for you, I think you got to get out of the game. Like that is the goal. I think at this stage in the game, final 8, final 9, 10. I think at this kind of like mid merge area, you want the people out who are who are the ones putting you forward.
Yeah. Okay. I think from Caroline's perspective, this is a very interesting move here. Caroline,
I think too soon for Caroline. P.S.
Okay, let's talk about it
because like she says, like, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
She says, I'm not going to win against Gabe. Like people perceive him as being, better than me or having played a better game than me. I think she even says like he has played a better game than me. I don't think she makes it about perception. Caroline, oh, so gracious, but that's the kind of move where I feel like that's the one to wait. Like Gabe turning on Kyle kind of makes sense to me, but Caroline turning on Gabe, wait till the final 6. He's going to be a huge target then. Wait till the final 5.
Yeah.
He's going to be a huge target then. But like by getting rid of this Tuku block, like you are like minimizing your own leverage in this game.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And you and I think, have been pretty complimentary about Caroline so far, and certainly could see a path for her in terms of like her edit in the season to ultimately getting to the end. But I'm not sure necessarily how she gets to the end without other players making errors in terms of what they're doing. Because now I'm not sure who she jumped to or with. She doesn't seem to have any other particularly close allies other than Sue. So if it's just her and Sue, it's not her and Sue and Kyle,
right?
For sure.
I mean, maybe she's thinking her and Sue and Teeny. I mean, we've seen her talking to Teeny a bunch,
potentially,
right? And I feel like that would be at this stage. And we'll talk about this later. But I think Teeny's got a lot of game left in them. But I think at this stage, from Caroline's perspective, like a Sue, Teeny, Caroline perspective, final 3 could be could be good for her.
Well, what do you think the next move is from Caroline's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's got to push for Genevieve, right? And the challenge is going to for Caroline, I think, is going to be keeping Kyle around,
or
given that Sue hates Kyle.
Do you want to keep Kyle around, or is the next move of like, okay, Kyle doesn't win immunity, and this is like a great way to patch things up with Sue of like, all right, Sue, come on, let's get Kyle.
Right. So yeah, that's a good point that Sue is probably going to feel a bit betrayed by Caroline.
For sure. I was very surprised that Caroline would make this move without looping in Sue.
Well, do we know Sue wasn't looped in? It's possible.
She voted for Genevieve.
Yeah, but she might just not have been willing to vote for Gabe.
She does not strike me as like having an incredible poker face.
She's got something's going on with her face. We got to talk about that too.
Yeah,
she has a very dirty face.
Very dirty. Yeah, very dirty.
Yeah. Do you remember Nina's face in like Survivor? Nina, who was in the 24, I think.
Nina Acosta.
Yeah, falls face first, and kind of like the rest of the game was like the rest of the game was like one more day. But like, I mean, like. Sue, as far as we've seen, has not taken any like direct facial injuries, but kind of reminds me of like Nina's face in that.
I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, it looks very dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I spoke with Carolyn about this. That Carolyn had some theories that we could listen to in just to tease that podcast about that. But yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Anyway, so no poker face for Sue, just a dirty face.
Is there strategy to looking extra dirty and homely, like in terms of like if I really like make myself like, if you go into like a job interview, it's like, oh well, this guy's not a threat. Look at him, he's all dirty.
Well, and
he's like Pigpen.
The mosquitoes bother you less if you're filthy. That's
interesting.
It's when you get clean. At least that was in Token Sheens. Like the bugs, when we got clean, that's when the bugs really came for us. That said, like nobody wants to cuddle in the shelter when you stink. And maybe that's the goal too, is like to keep people away in the shelter at night.
Yeah. Well, just because you are dirty doesn't mean you stink.
I mean, they're often related,
Often related, but if you're putting dirt on your face, it doesn't mean you stink.
I guess so, but it just sort of suggests you're not bathing, which would mean your like overall human stink is like, accumulating.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, okay, next move for Caroline, other than voting out Kyle potentially, do you see any other obvious move for her?
I mean, I kind of imagine the next few votes, and this is purely speculative, so I'm not like staking my reputation on this, is going to be kind of like a group flow a little bit. Like I think like
a group flow.
Well, but the last couple have seemed like there was like more back and forth, right? I feel like next one it's either going to be Genevieve or Kyle, and probably the one after that will be Kyle or Genevieve.
Yeah.
Who's like. To me, those seem like so obviously the major targets now. And then I think you've got like someone that you've got like at the final 6, you've got Caroline, Sue, Sam, Rachel, Andy, Teeny. Maybe Sam goes there.
Yeah.
And then Sam and Caroline are probably 6 and 5, maybe in that order.
Well, could we talk about this a little bit? I think that there is like some interesting voting blocks that are going on here right now. Could we say the Gata 3 is the most important voting block in the game?
Sort of surprisingly, since like these 3 have like no, don't seem to be.
And Andy turned on them at the Sierra vote, but suddenly, this 3 could be a group. Is Kyle with them?
Is Kyle with them? No, I don't think so.
Are they even a 3? Is Rachel doing her own thing? Is Andy doing his own thing?
I think they're probably not. My guess is they will probably work together for the next few votes, but only because they're kind of like all trying to play the middle. Sam sort of. I mean, wounded birds has been like a theme of this season, right? From when Gabe kind of called Caroline and Sue that early on, and he he explains that further in your interview podcast with him, but. Sam sort of like looking to create this alliance of the people on the bottom, Rachel feeling like she doesn't have a place, Andy kind of like trying to like work from that. Like, does anyone have a place? Is everybody on the bottom in this game? Is there anyone not on the bottom of the game?
You have 8 people that all think they're on the bottom.
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe. Like Teeny said they're on the bottom. Like truly, who does not think they're on the bottom?
Survivor 47, bottoms up.
The bottom feeders. The Gabe was like the only person who talked consistently about being on top. Now
look at him now. Look at him now. Yeah. And then Teeny. You said you want to talk about Teeny. Teeny, a free agent.
Yeah.
Goes where?
Well, that's where I think like, I can see Teeny working with Rachel and Andy and Caroline. And, maybe Sue is a part of that to like take out some of the people who they do perceive as threatening, which are Kyle and Genevieve now.
Yeah.
The question is like, how far does Sam go? Right. Sam was like the best thing to happen to
back,
Sam
baby.
Was getting Sierra voted out. Right. Like being perceived as a wounded bird has been like has opened. And Sam feels like he doesn't have any agency in the game, but it's given him like actually like much more longevity than he probably otherwise would have had.
No. We've seen it throughout the history of the show and not just in the new era. And I think that there's been this misinterpretation of this. Like the greatest thing that can happen to you is your number one ally gets voted out.
Yeah.
Often,
especially,
but not if you do it.
Yeah. Especially, that's what I was going to say. Like if you're the one who does it, terrible for you because everyone's super suspicious of you. And then you have someone on the jury who hates you.
Yes.
But if it happens, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and we've seen the history of Survivor is littered with people.
Malcolm and Angie.
for sure. But, Jeremy and Natalie.
Yeah.
Steven and Jeremy.
Yeah.
That people who end up, with their number. Even like last season, look at Tiffany and Kenzie. Of that Kenzie thought about taking out Tiffany, ultimately decided not to do it. Then everybody else did it without her.
Amazing
she was on the win.
it's great for her. I mean, she was mad because she didn't get like the credit, but like I truly believe that Kenzie would have lost last season if Tiffany was on the jury and like furious at the betrayal.
Yeah. So you get your number one gets voted out.
Yeah.
And then you're less threatening.
This is the real strategy.
Yes.
Getting your number one voted out, but not getting the blame on you.
Not being part of it. Now, could you incept people, Steven? Could you sort of like go
into their dreams?
Could you manifest this of like, you know,
just like whisper in bed at night, you know,
but not be part of it.
JT's a threat.
And then you could come back. How dare you? How dare you? How could you?
Yeah.
You monsters.
Why does Rob keep whispering about Matthew von Ertfelder at night?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. Okay.
I don't know.
Anyway, so Teeny, I have a feeling you want to talk about the Teeny edit.
Well, is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's okay.
I mean, I think that Teeny, you know, we've talked about this a bunch, and I talked about this with Owen last week, just that, you know, for all that Teeny has accomplished very little in this game, they're getting an amazing edit of consistently being shown as strategic, consistently being shown as empathetic, consistently being shown as like a big, you know, a part of the decision-making process, often like a decisive part, even if always, well, I guess not decisive because always on the wrong side.
Not this time.
Not this time. But, you know, this episode, we saw I feel like this was like the Teeny coming into their own moment.
Yes. Like, and so do you think that, I do think that we are at the beginning of a Teeny run. I'd be very surprised if Teeny ends up going out. But are you feeling like that this culminates in Teeny winning Survivor 47?
That is my feeling. Now, I'm not like all in on Teeny because like we were saying, there's a lot of people who are viable. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Andy. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, I think Andy, Rachel is viable. I mean, I think Sam is someone who's I'm still not out on, but I do think from my perspective, Teeny is the likeliest candidate. And Andy's kind of like my runner-up, but I think Andy is probably a runner-up. I think Andy, my final three prediction has been for a while that it's Teeny, Andy, and Sue. I just think
we did get the beginning of Andy and Sue.
What? Oh, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think Rachel's going out in fire because we got one shot. We'll see.
Was there fire in the glasses?
There was fire in the glasses, Rob.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that that, you know, this is sort of was a big moment for Teeny, both in terms of like getting this sort of revenge arc that's based around getting revenge, you know, for Saul, which obviously had to be motivated by Saul's vest, you know, like that's like supercharge anybody's feelings about Saul. I mean, my feelings were supercharged and I'm already really a passionate Saul-acolyte. Anyway, Solomonite. Anyway, and then we have obviously that really powerful expression of Teeny's ambivalence about their, you know, social status and how that relates to their identity, which was like such a beautiful moment. And you know, potentially, you know, is not resolved, right? Like there's more story there.
Yeah. What'd you think about Teeny holding up the burnt bag?
Yeah.
And said, okay, the burnt
fire making winner.
The burnt bag is a symbol of my game. Did you follow that analogy?
From the ashes. She's feeling like the bag is
like the phoenix. Yeah.
The phoenix. Yeah.
Like the Teenix. Yeah.
The Teenix.
Yes.
Let's see
okay.
it. Let's see the images.
Stephen, you posted to Twitter, Fishy for Saul's vest.
Oh my gosh. What a holy cow. And Dalton, you know, this was you missed the question about, you know, what about Saul's vest, Rob, in your limited interview. Dalton did ask the question, like, what were you all making about Saul's vest, and Gabe has a very funny answer to that. But like,
yes,
apparently,
was this again when Saul was trying on like Rome's clothes that he left at Ponderosa?
I mean, it's just incredible, and like he looks like just so like exuding, you know, all this masculine energy. Just like look at those muscles and those pecs, my gosh, like those arms. I mean, truly, like I posted on Blue Sky last night, like how do you maintain so much muscle mass? And other people have pointed out people like James Clement, who obviously maintained a tremendous amount of muscle mass.
Did people say to you, Stephen, it's only day 17?
I know there's that aspect too. It's like, even so, I mean, it's
only 5 days longer than Rob was on Survivor All Stars.
Yeah, that's very funny. He's still like, did you look that good coming out of Survivor?
I didn't look that good starting. Yeah. But it's not day 33.
If you look at that image of me that I took of Saul, So like that's me taking a picture of my TV screen. How are these people? You know, you get like the Mike Blooms of the world and adult. Where are they getting these Scally like these like
they got
gifts and images? Like, what am I doing wrong?
They got a whole content farm going on at their house.
I know something is going because like instant reaction. They got like a team set up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
somebody
that
should
was,
do an
that
investigation.
Was big. That was big. So yeah, I do think. What's your take on Teeny? Do you think?
So I think that Teeny, is about to go on, have like a very impactful part of their story. I don't think Teeny is going to be the winner of the season, and I wonder if Teeny ends up being sort of fallen angel or goes to the final tribal council but doesn't end up winning. I'm just not sure that the jury awards Teeny. Everybody likes Teeny. But do these players, and again, Teeny has some fans on the jury in Sierra, in Saul so far. Gabe. Yeah. However, Gabe, that I asked Gabe about, hey, why did you call Caroline a snake? Gabe said, I didn't call Caroline a snake. I called Teeny a snake.
But he was saying that's like a little bit of like, he was giving her credit. Like, you've got a little snake in you. Like, you're playing more of a game than I realized.
Yeah. But if Teeny, and maybe Teeny's big move could be, hey, I took out Genevieve. I slayed the dragon we were back and forth this whole game of like, that we were never on the same side of these votes. Maybe that could be like Teeny's signature moment in the game and sort of like, okay, nobody thought I could do it. However, I do feel like that I just don't know if there's enough there for Teeny in terms of being a non-factor in terms of like how the game has gone.
But I think your point is right there. It's like, I think these days you just need to be like the most liked person and have like one thing that they can point to say, this is why we did it. So, look at, there's no way at the final 9, we would have said Marianne is going to win that season, or, Gabler, he had like one move and like everybody disliked the other two more than they disliked him.
Very fair.
I think that's really Teeny's path. And I think if Teeny is sitting there with Andy and Sue, I think Sue is not going to get respect. And I think Andy, as much as he seems to be playing a very active game, I think he's going to have a lot of dislike from the jury. You've got obviously Sierra, Mayor Ponderosa, who he betrayed. You have Saul. He was a Saul secret agent. He blew the whole list. And now Gabe, like this Gabe, Gabe was talking to Andy and Andy betrayed him. So, there's always that danger of being in the person in everybody's ear of being that person. I think what sets Teeny apart from a lot of these players is that they are really clear about their loyalties. They're really clear about their motivations. And I think that's something that when you do get to the end that the jury respects, like, hey, this was the team you were a part of. Mm-hmm. Here are the moves you made. Like, you stuck to your group and you outplayed the people who weren't in your group. Yeah. And I think if you can get to the end with that kind of resume and being well-liked, I think that's a lock.
And twice now in the previously on, the show has done like a lot of like clarification on what Teeny's intentions were and Teeny's reaction to a vote. It happened both on the Asia vote, where there was like the previously on was really focused on that Teeny didn't want to go along with the plan to vote out Asia and ended up writing down Saul's name because that Teeny was too emotionally attached to Asia to be able to do that. That came as a cleanup in the previously on. And then this week's previously on was really all about Teeny's perspective on the Saul blindside.
Yeah, exactly. And now, but let's talk about Andy too. Because
okay, you do one more Teeny thing.
Oh yeah, please. I love to hear it.
One more. Okay, this is not a paid sponsorship from Wicked, opening in theaters nationwide, but Teeny came into this game and said that their wardrobe was New Jersey inspired Scarecrow. And you know what the Scarecrow didn't like, Steven?
The heart.
Fire.
Rain?
Hated fire. The Scarecrow was very scared of fire. Did not want to go near the fire.
That's the other thing. I think Teeny's going to win fire. I think Teeny's going to beat Rachel in fire. That's what
what's the matter, like Scarecrow? Afraid of a little fire?
Yeah. I think like maybe like Sue wins the final four, takes Andy. I don't know. This is really getting like totally.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a Captain Planet thing of like the elements, and Teeny is the fire, Sue is the earth.
Yeah. Sue's definitely the earth. Yeah. Rachel's the water. And I guess that makes Andy the air.
Wind? Yeah, the air.
Yeah.
Okay. What were you gonna say? Andy? Is that what you're going to?
Well, a lot of people are also talking about Andy because we do see a lot of how Andy is playing the strategic game.
Yes.
We're also seeing people who are like, there's something interesting about Andy where it's like this combination of playing this really strategic game. And if Genevieve had been the one to go out, I was going to give Andy full credit for that because I do think he kind of like set the ball in motion there. But
he set the ball in motion with his tongue.
That's right. That's right. His forked snakish tongue is but sometimes these moments do seem a little bit like that. It was like this moment with like Andy and Sue, which I feel like is really emblematic of Andy's game. And Andy's like, Sue, you and I, we're the ones, like, I want to move forward with you in this game. And you're like, oh wow, what a passionate speech from Andy. So it's like, okay. She's like, sure. All right, whatever. And it's like, is Andy being super strategic or like or is it like sort of like a coach-esque strategy? Like, is Andy a coach character?
No, I don't know if Andy is a coach character, but I think Andy is really great in the confessionals. And Andy is really great at like talking about the game, talking about his position, making metaphor and analogy about it. So Andy's a great storyteller. And so I think that the editors and the producers have really capitalized on that. How much is Andy actually doing, I think, is up for debate. I think that maybe it might even be a situation where Andy could get to the final tribal council and lay out like this really great speech and like resume of what he did, and the people on the jury might be like, that didn't happen.
Yeah, right. And like we saw some of those. I actually think that's exactly what happened. I think he's going to be like, I was in everybody's ear. I was talking to everybody. I was the one pulling together these plans from like behind the scenes. And everybody's be like, no, you were sort of like that random guy who we all kind of like tried to include. I mean, that's sort of what happened to me, to be honest with you. I was like tried to make that case, and everyone's like, oh, was that you? And so I do think that I have a lot of empathy for that. And I mean, I really enjoy Andy, like as TV. He's great TV. Like, and there is just like a little bit, like, because he knows the game so well and he is so good at talking about it. But there is that like a little bit of disconnect between like his own perception of himself and kind of like what is actually happening. But then sometimes he's like very aware of that, and so he's also very emotionally vulnerable. I mean, like, that's why I kind of see him as a coachish character, and not like one-to-one with Coach, but like
both have great hair.
Yeah, both have great hair.
Both Coach are fans of the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, but Coach had that like vulnerability to him that I think Andy has. Like sort of like there was like both this kind of like grandiosity and this vulnerability,
sensitivity. Yeah.
Okay,
Gabe,
is Andy coming back?
I was gonna ask you that. So Gabe said I'll be back in the episode. And so first, let's just do the checklist on Gabe. Gabe.
I just don't think he's going to cut it. In terms of what a big character. If you had asked me after the first episode, I would have said I think there's a very strong possibility Gabe.
He gets back. For me the Tevin Award of that. His best episode of the season was episode 1. Yeah.
Oh, that's you're good at these comparisons. That's very good. I thought the James Jones thing for him was really good too.
Yeah. Okay, but I probably think that is Gabe coming back maybe one day.
Yeah, I just think like the
New Era Second Chances, if that's a season, I think that's a good spot for Gabe.
Yeah, right. And that, especially if it's soon, I think that but yeah, he kind of almost was underedited, like you said, because like they didn't really know what to do with him, and you had all these kind of like kookier characters.
Andy.
Yeah, I think Andy is a very viable returning player.
I think so too. Yeah. I really do. I don't think that Andy will win the season, but I do think that if we were doing a Survivor 47 returnee draft, I think Andy might be the number 1 pick.
For 47. Now, what about Andy and John Lovett on a tribe together? I think that's a non-zero possibility for Survivor 50.
It would be great to see. Would they be able to mend fences?
Of course. Oh, that's the question. That's
Is it a rival season?
No, just like let's put, it's like putting, I mean, I guess they didn't put Spencer and Cass on a tribe together.
It'd be like putting like Francesca and Philip back together.
Yeah, exactly. Put these two people, get a lot of, that's the perfect comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Final 3 loser and the first person out who he was responsible for.
Yeah. Be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else really popping for you for a potential returnee?
I mean, there's a lot. So just from looking at
everybody
the whole
would be great. It goes without saying.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think. I mean, Sam, you can see it, but like, I just think that's a tough spot for Sam.
Yeah. All right. How about let me ask the question this way: who would be the number 2 pick?
Well,
for the returnee
Jeff
draft?
Say that someone said that Jeff said I hadn't listened to it, that he's surprised by Saul's popularity. Like,
yes,
is like,
but also that they said that they thought that they found Saul to be a little quiet on the island.
Right, and that's typically the kiss of death for a returning player. But like, will they bring back someone who's beloved by the fan base, who was maybe like gave them less kind of heat that they wanted in confessionals?
Again, if it's like, new era second chances, I think it's more likely. But if they're going to come up with a list of like, they're like 20 picks out of like 700 people, I'm not sure. I think that if I had to have in the draft, I think the second pick for the returnee from Survivor 47, I think is Genevieve.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right, because Genevieve is a very fun character. I think
she'll play hard. She's got kind of a little bit of like a goofy streak.
Yeah,
and she is great in the confessional.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. I think that's right.
Who knows? Like, Genevieve, if she gets to like 7th place, like it feels like okay, that's like a nice spot for a returnee to come back from.
I'm not out on Rachel. I mean, like Rachel's like not like she's not like a lock like a Carolyn is a lock, but like although I guess Carolyn's not a lock. Assuming she doesn't go on the traders, maybe, but I feel like Rachel's competitive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Steven, I am curious to know who gets the Fishy.
So that's a tough one. Okay,
it's not been an easy season for the Fishy.
No, last week I gave it to Gabe, and like that's like
kiss of death.
Yeah, truly, apparently. I was considering Kyle, because we haven't even talked about the shot in the dark negotiation. My gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Where obviously that was Caroline's initial idea, but then Kyle's the one who kind of comes up with this offer. Like, what do you think about getting rid of the shot in the darks? On the other hand, Kyle is probably the person who needs the shot in the dark the most. Not necessarily. And then, the idea that he kind of sold out Gabe would be, I thought was like maybe good for him, but I've kind of come around to the other side that it's not a great decision for Kyle here. And I just really wanted to give it to the last person who hasn't gotten it, but I don't think that's going to work out. I don't think that's right. So I'm thinking Andy. What do you think?
Fishy for Andy. I don't even think I was thinking Andy for this vote.
Well, just because we saw so much of him like being in everybody's ear and kind of like spreading paranoia.
Yeah.
Right. Give me some other options.
So, all right. So I would say I would put Caroline up for suggestion, although we kind of talked through how that maybe it wasn't such a great move for Caroline.
Genevieve dodges the vote, but
how about Rachel?
Yeah, why? I'm open to Rachel.
So even though last night I was a little bit more like, I think it would probably be better for Rachel to get out Genevieve. She does ultimately, like we see her sort of like carving out her own path, sort of like recovering. Like she was in kind of a dicey spot after at the beginning of the merge. A lot of people were talking about Rachel, especially when she escaped from the safety without power. Rachel was on a lot of people's minds, but I think also Sierra going out of the game ends up being a net positive for Rachel. She's got the situation going on with Andy. She kind of called Sam out for what he did last week. Sam says, hey, I really want to work with you. We get from her that she is potentially going to work with Sam, but also going to be looking out for number one. I think she has a lot of options there. She ends up getting Gabe out of the game. And so she's kind of like the biggest swing person in the game. She really could go anywhere.
What about Sam? Thundercats 78 has the
That's
argument.
interesting also.
Sam made moves from the bottom, got what he wanted in the Gabe boot. sucked it up with a shot in the dark rice situation. He kind of mended fences with Rachel, although like sort of, after last week.
Mm-hmm. I would not be opposed to Sam getting the shot. Has he gotten a Fishy yet this season?
Yeah, Kyle's the only person who has not gotten a Fishy yet. But I think I might be leaning. I mean, Sam and Rachel to me are very what?
Sue's gotten a Fishy?
I guess. I don't even remember. Probably. There was one boot where she seemed to be the driver. Maybe I got, I think so.
Maybe.
People are saying, yeah. I think it might be Sam, actually. And I think like Sam might be, I think Sam. All right, Fishy for Sam. Well-deserved.
Yeah, potentially he has Kyle coming over to work with them. He's in a good spot, really bounce back from the bottom. Somehow, that, as we mentioned, like Sierra going out, nobody's really talking about Sam as like the biggest threat anymore.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, Sam is like had all this heat on him.
His name's not even coming up anymore.
Yeah, and now nobody's talking about it. But he's also like not really in a position to be dangerous to people. He's not winning immunities. Mm-hmm. He's not, pulling off moves. Like what is his, resume?
And he got to try kiwi also from joining the box.
Kiwi. He made, an informed decision. Pineapple over kiwi. That's a great choice. Pineapple over kiwi. Who wouldn't?
Okay. All right. Let's take some questions from the listeners and see what they want to know about. Okay. All right. How about Mel wants to know, with all the burning of the amulets, idols, and shot in the dark, do you think that Jeff will let them go back to regular Survivor with no twist next season? What are you, crazy?
No. Yeah. He's permanently banning this whole cast for their audacity.
Were you surprised, though, that Jeff took the deal for shots in the dark?
What I was most surprised, so until that point, I was like, why are you calling this a rice negotiation? There's no negotiation happening. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is the rice negotiation. And people are like, okay, what about 3? What about this? What about that? And he's like, no.
It's a tough negotiation.
Yeah, like but then the fact, like, if you call it a negotiation, there has to be some kind of, and that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of cool. We didn't talk about it yet. Is this a good decision? Who is this a good decision for to get rid of the shots in the dark?
I kind of thought it was a good decision for the people that are at the top, specifically Gabe. I thought he maybe overplayed his hand in terms of like trying to push for it, because it's really the people that are at the bottom are the people that need the shot in the dark the most.
Yeah.
But in terms, I think Rachel, big winner, also maybe a reason why she could have gotten the Fishy, because she doesn't have to pay anything. I kind of like that there's some poetic justice or irony, take your pick, that Rachel, once upon a time, tries to steal rice at a challenge. Jeff says, Rachel, get out of here. Stop stealing the rice.
Yep.
Instead, she was the only person that plays her shot in the dark. And then Jeff trades the rice for all the shots in the dark. Rachel pays nothing for rice and ultimately comes away with the rice that she coveted.
Should Rachel get the Fishy, or the one to lose the least? I don't know.
No, Sam, I think you nailed it.
All right, we made the decision. Okay.
Yeah, but
all right.
I think it's kind of like net nothing for everybody. Like, I know Genevieve was like, oh, I wish I had the shot in the dark, but it's already the final 9. I think you can only play the shot in the dark until the final 7.
Yeah.
So there's only 2 more votes after this that the shot in the dark could even be played. Like the shot in the dark, I know that Caleb got it to hit at the final 12 or 13, but it feels like more of a pre-merge thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think it has a lot of utility at this point in the game.
Well, I thought John's point of, I felt like there's better than a 1 in 6 chance. John Lovett's point, there's better than a 1 in 6 chance that socially I can pull this, versus having it be the actual 1 in 6 chance. I thought that was like a good way of thinking about it. And it seems like most people do not actually view the odds of the shot in the dark as being, outweighing the vote. And, Gabe made that point. Again, Gabe, very like smart talker about this game, to Sam, that, your vote is more important to you right now than the shot in the dark is.
Yeah. This is a good question from Josh Kettles, the aforementioned Josh Kettles, that he asked about the tribute at the end of the episode about Barb. And of course, Barb is Jeff Probst's mom, who very sadly passed away. Josh wants to know, did either of you ever meet or hear Jeff talk about his mother, Barb? That was such a touching tribute.
Yeah, I never heard Jeff talk about her, but I certainly met her. She and Jeff's father would come to the finales, and they would sort of mingle with you probably had more extensive. Yeah, you should probably talk about this.
So you two were on an even numbered season. Was your finale Mother's Day?
Oh, I don't remember that. I mean, it probably was around there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
typically the Survivor spring finale was in May. And then it typically ended up being Mother's Day weekend. And I don't remember from Survivor All-Stars. I do remember meeting Jeff's mom after Survivor the Amazon, and she was really, really nice. She was very proud of her son. She would watch the show every week, as you would expect if your son was the host of Survivor. She was really into it, and I thought that was a very nice tribute at the end of the episode.
Yeah, like to tell the next adventure. I thought, and they were just such lovely. I mean, I remember, Jeff was, when I was on, was so intimidating and aloof. Not aloof, but like, he wasn't like well, he wasn't hanging out with us. So, but and they were there, and like, to us, they were like celebrities because they were Jeff's parents, but they were just like so like the nicest people, like really happy and eager to like talk to all of the contestants, like so like kind and down to earth seeming. And I had only a very few limited interactions with them, but they were all absolutely lovely and just like so positive and wonderful.
Okay, let's take another question. And
Brooklyn Zed asks on Blue Sky, do you think that Andy's day 3 meltdown is the social equivalent of Tyson injuring his arm in Blood versus Water?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it's the same, because I think that people did not look at Andy as like, oh my God, like what a gifted social player. I'm trying to think of like, who the girl, like, I don't know if like Parvati is back in like a returning player season and has like this like epic meltdown where it's like, ooh, like socially that was a kind of a faux pas from Parv, where that's kind of like what it was for Tyson.
Boston Rob getting some crybaby-itis,
certainly, like that ended up being a good thing for him ultimately. But for Tyson, I think that there was some concern about like, oh, Tyson could go on a run and end up winning these challenges, and then it was like his superpower was taken from him. I don't think that Andy was looked at as like this superpowered social player.
Yeah, and I think conversely, it's sort of like, in talked a little bit last season about like kind of like moving between tiers. And I think it pushed him down a tier into that sort of like untouchable category where, even the things he does do, he might not get credit for because he's already like preconceived to be,
I think that there is something there of like that. Did it make it sort of like disqualifying for him of like, okay, we're not worried about Andy because he has had this moment. He's not a serious person in terms of being a threat.
Right.
So we're not worried about him. And then he has 23 days to potentially do damage control and fix it.
Right. So, but he would really have to, prove, I think he would have to have his fingerprints all over like a few moves. And I think at this point, I mean, he does kind of have that Sierra blindside, which, I mean, I think of Gabler all the time with Andy because like, Gabler preseason was like in the palm fronds, like much crazier than what Andy did. I will never get over that. But then Andy's responsible for that first juror vote, just like, I guess Ellie was a pre-jury, but so just, but in the same sort of timing as Gabler's. And now Andy's hiding in plain sight. So I do think there's some Gabler upside for Andy. I'm not out on that.
It'll be really interesting to see if Andy gets to the final tribal council and what the response to Andy in a final tribal council would end up being. If we end up looking back at the season and if Andy is the 0 vote finalist at the end of the season, that we look back and say, yeah, that the meltdown on the mat was ultimately disqualifying and Andy was drawing dead from day 3 and we had no idea. Or if he's able to pivot off of that story and it does have that Gabler upside that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think it's the former, to be honest with you, but I would not be shocked by the latter.
Okay. All right. How about, would it have been a good move for Genevieve and the Tukus to target Rachel? We know that Caroline and Jen are on to Rachel as a threat, and Kyle would keep Gabe, Genevieve as a shield.
This is a good point, and this is something you asked Gabe too in your interview. Why not find a consensus target? If the Tukus can work with Genevieve, like, wouldn't that be something?
Right. And for Genevieve, why not? I mean, to be potentially to the fifth wheel of Tuku and potentially go with them. I mean, if you're the Tuku 4, if you're Gabe, anything just to get through this vote. So, why not go along with them? Now, what they did not know is that Caroline and Kyle had already jumped ship. So maybe that would not have been possible. But I think if you're Genevieve, I think that would be a good, worthwhile move to explore.
Yeah. I think that would have been great. I mean, it'd be great for all those parties, and so much of what happens in New Era Survivor is determined just by how little time they have.
And not
they
for
just don't have
anything.
the time.
For Genevieve, if she survives this voting with the Tuku 4, like, it is not that she's going to be the next target. The other 3 people that are left in the game are going to still be trying to figure out, well, how do we break off the Tuku?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was interesting. Gabe was saying we were all kind of like sitting around and nobody was talking to each other. Like, I do think, like, again, like just like the logistics of being in this place determine so much of it. It's like you're all in the shelter. You don't have much time left. The sun is setting, that determines what happens on the show. They just did not, if you had like a week and, limitless time and space, and if it was like a digital game, like maybe different things would happen. But the constraints, it's like tennis. The constraints determine, what the strategy.
Yeah. I also wonder, this was a 2-day cycle. I'm always fascinated with, like, okay, this was 1 day, this was 2 day. This was a 2-day cycle. I think that coming on the heels of a bunch of 1-day cycles, was this almost like too much time now for the players? Of like that they had like, all right, well, it's like we can go to tribal now. I think we're ready. It's either gonna be Gabe or Genevieve.
Exactly. It's like they like
they're too efficient. Yeah. Okay. Mel Hooker wants to know, how much does Kyle remind Steven of JT? He's giving major likable winner vibes, but has no Fishbach to help him.
I don't know. I mean, like, JT was super sharky. I do appreciate, like, everybody who's said over the years that I was the real strategic brain there. It's not true. Like, JT was extremely strategic, great at like working people. I think, Kyle has a lot more sort of like naivete to him, and a little bit more innocence, where like you don't really get the sense that he's like working all the angles in the way that JT truly was.
Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. George wants to know, how does the season compare to alliances versus voting blocks? What this group is doing? Do you have a distinction?
It honestly doesn't even feel like voting blocks. It's just like this group for this. I mean, the closest we had to an alliance is that Tuku 4, and they all hate each other, or at least Sue hated Kyle. It wasn't even clear that they were necessarily like voting in sync so much. It's just that there was always like a different, they were split for a bunch of times. There was like a bigger target out there. And so it does like feel like the alliance thing is not happening so much. We've seen the best and most successful people are the ones who work together in tight alliances. Like, just do it. Just stick with an alliance. It's the best strategy for Survivor. It's been proven out over 47 seasons.
Yeah, but not too big of an alliance, though.
Yeah. 3 people alliance. Just stick with the plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll give you one last question. Chris Lambert says, is it actually a disadvantage to win this reward? Only 3 people versus 6 back at camp in this instance. I was listening to Tyson's podcast this afternoon. He was talking to Kelly Nalbandian, and he was talking about how that maybe he might want to throw this challenge to be part of the 6 that goes back to camp. It's so hard
to like, I mean, it's so hard to throw a reward challenge. You're just so hungry. And like, that's where like, I don't know, a lot more strategy happens on the rewards than does on the going back at camp, because you just have this whole like winter vibe. You get food, it powers you for the immunity. I don't know. I don't think I could ever. I mean,
in fairness, the plan that got executed at Tribal Council was the plan that was hatched on the reward challenge.
That's right. I mean, like, Tyson probably would have a whole stash of coconuts to go back to. Mm-hmm. I would not have that stash. So I would probably, I'd have like,
he was well fed.
Greed and hunger would just not be able to. I didn't have any problem throwing immunity challenges, the reward challenges. I don't know.
Did you throw a lot of immunity challenges?
I mean, I wanted to throw more than I could. I don't know how specific you want to get here.
In token sheets or second chances?
Second chances. The eating challenge, I wanted to throw, but it's really hard to throw an eating challenge, especially.
But that was in the pre-merge, right?
Yeah, but the dynamics
to vote out Joe.
And it would have been so good because Kelly had her idol. Everyone would have thought it was Kelly. She probably would have played her idol. She was definitely not playing it for Joe. And we would have got Joe and Flush Kelly's idol. Oh my God. Oh, and that's one of those like what might have been moments for me in Survivor. Because but it was an eating, like, how can you throw an eating challenge? It's like impossible. I mean, I could have eaten very slowly, but there were a few examples where like the other group was just like totally screwing it. So I was like looking to see if there was any, if it had been down to me, the final point was mine, I would have thrown it.
Okay, yeah. It would have been like Survivor China when James is trying to throw the challenge to Lunch Lady Denise.
And like fail and can't. And he's finally like, okay, I'll eat the balut.
Couldn't be done.
Yeah.
All right. Steven, what's coming up for you?
I don't know. Nothing. You know, I'm over at Blue Sky.
Yeah.
I gotta say, Rob, it's a little, you know, I'm really enjoying Blue Sky, and it's really fun to like live ski over there. And it's like that nice kind of like have a clubbier atmosphere. I'm kind of bummed that, you know, the group is fractured. There's still people on Twitter. There's people like, you know,
what do you want to have happen? You want everybody to come back into Twitter?
I want everyone to be together wherever it is.
Yeah.
You know, whether
you know
it's
how
Blue Sky
I've been
or
looking
Twitter,
at it, and this is how I've been describing it, because I think that Twitter is still the ocean. I think that is sort of like where
and Blue Sky's the captain.
No, not the captain. But I think that Blue Sky is a little bit more like the group chat. Like I think that there's probably going to be like more like a conversation, especially around this thing of ours and what we do. Like I think there's going to be like more like feedback about the shows and like people like telling us what they think and us being able to comment back. I think that's going to happen more on Blue Sky. But I do feel like that that Twitter is still the place where you're going for, you know, hey, this thing is happening. This is, you know, where you're getting some information from. And then it's a little bit more of the, okay, let's go into the private meeting room a little bit more, the public private meeting room.
But I liked having those conversations like in sync, you know, with like, you know, the people that I was corresponding with all the time, you know, Dr. Amanda and Josh Kettles and like, you know, that good, you know, Heather, like, and then also like the total randoms whose names were just a string of consonants, you know, like, and then getting like, it was all happening in the same place. And I like that. I mean, also like not for nothing, but on, you know, Twitter, I had like 65,000 followers. On Blue Sky. Like I barely have more followers than David Bloomberg. You know how terrible that feels?
It's humiliating.
It's humiliating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can find Stephen Fishbach on Blue Sky at stephenfishbach.bksy.app.
Yeah, that's right. I'm there. Yeah, I think
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. And Rob's there too. There was like some question about it, whether it was the real Rob or not.
Yeah, you know what? I had, and actually one of the best features about Blue Sky, and Josh Kettles, he's like Beetlejuice, now he has to show up, that he has been running a starter pack for different things. Chappelle had created one also, but it's actually like the one cool feature that they have over Twitter of that you could just go to Blue Sky and then here's like a list of things and you could just follow them all, where Twitter does not have that same kind of functionality. So, but what I was worried about was that I joined and then I had not followed people. I didn't want people to be like, oh, he followed this person but didn't follow me.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, because like you don't really see, it's so hard to like see who's following you. You just got a list and they've got all the like that Blue Sky, that whatever. Like I'm sure there are people who I'm not following who I used to follow. And so if so, you know, holler at me. So
yeah, give us some grace. It's probably an oversight if we're not following somebody who's very important.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's going to do it for the Know-It-Alls. Be on the lookout for my interview with Carolyn coming up tomorrow. Very fun one-on-one with Carolyn. Very much looking forward to that. Then also Club Condo is coming back on Monday. I believe Brandon Donlin is scheduled to join Chappelle and I for a fun Club Condo. And if you missed it, check out my interview with Q and everything else here in our Survivor podcast feed at WeKnowSurvivor.com. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.